God's chosen ones, 3 eyes, signs you never noticed, but heaven did. The eyes that heaven marked but the world misread. They told you your eyes were intense. Some said haunting, others holy. But no one ever told you why. Soft wind, close-up of a tear-trilled eye staring out a window. A child stares back. You've walked through life wondering why strangers avoid your gaze, or why children stare like they remember you from somewhere deeper. Heartbeat slows. A whisper follows like thunder wrapped in silk. But what if your eyes weren't just for seeing? What if they were windows to a soul the world wasn't ready for? If your gaze ever made someone confess, if your silence ever shook a room, this message was written in heaven with your name on it, not just eyes, portals. Elijah had never liked mirrors, not because he was ashamed of who he was, but because when he looked into his own eyes, it felt like something ancient was looking back, something that remembered too much, something that had survived too much. He was 41 now, a counselor at a quiet school, tucked between desert hills and sun-bleached fences. He didn't talk much, never needed to. People told him he had those eyes, the kind that made you feel seen too deeply. Students would come in for a schedule change or a simple question and leave in tears, not because he said something, but because his silence somehow unraveled their masks. It had always been this way. When he was a boy, the neighborhood kids avoided playing with him at night. "You're too serious," they said, or worse, "you see stuff." He didn't understand what that meant at first, until he started seeing it too. When his grandmother died, he was 11, but at the funeral, he didn't cry. He just looked at her, her hands folded gently, and whispered, "I'll see you soon, just not the way they think." His uncle overheard it and never looked at Elijah the same again. You see, Elijah didn't just carry memories. He carried something far heavier, recognition. People recognized something in him, even if they didn't understand it. And the more he aged, the quieter he became, because the more truth you carry, the more the world tries to silence you, not always with words, but with fear, discomfort, and avoidance. He once asked God, "Why do people look away when I look into them?" And he felt the answer before it arrived. Because your eyes remind them of what they've forgotten, that there is something eternal living inside them. He never asked that question again. Instead, he listened. And now, sitting in that empty cafe, he could feel it happening again. The waitress, no more than 25, avoided his eyes. She smiled politely, then turned her head just slightly. He didn't judge her. He knew the signs. People weren't scared of him. They were scared of what his gaze exposed. And what Elijah had finally come to understand was that this wasn't a curse. It was a mark, a divine fingerprint, not in his hands, but in his eyes. So if you've ever been told you were too intense, if people confess things to you they didn't mean to share, if you've avoided mirrors because something deeper stares back, then maybe, just maybe, you're carrying the same silent mark Elijah carries. And today it's time to uncover the truth, one eye sign at a time. Elijah never meant to be intimidating, but truth often is. It wasn't his posture. It wasn't his voice. He barely used it. It was his gaze. People would enter the cafe, glance at him, and instinctively look away. Even those who smiled couldn't hold eye contact for long. A woman once told him during a church meeting, "Your eyes make me feel like I'm not wearing skin." He didn't respond. He didn't need to, because deep down he knew what she meant. Elijah had the kind of eyes that didn't just look at you, they read you. And that's the first mark of the chosen: depth. Not from training, not from ego, but from pain. Because before your eyes can see through masks, they must first survive the shattering of their own illusions. When Elijah was 17, he watched the man he thought was his father drive away for the last time. There was no goodbye, no rage, just a glance in the rearview mirror, and then gone. That day, Elijah stopped believing people's words. He began studying their energy. He learned early that what people said with their mouths rarely matched what they radiated in silence. And the eyes? That's where the contradiction lived. God, why do I always know when someone's lying? He asked that question in prayer once. Late at night, after hearing a friend deny something Elijah knew was true, and the whisper returned, "Because I gave you the eyes to see what most people bury." The chosen carry this first mark in their gaze, not because they sought it, but because they endured what most others avoid. They've sat in rooms where no one spoke, but still felt attacked. They've been in relationships where everything looked good, but nothing felt aligned. They've cried at funerals where others laughed, and laughed in moments that should have broken them. Because once you've seen beyond appearances, you can't unsee it. Elijah once had a student, a young man named Marcus. Star athlete, bright future, always smiling. One afternoon, Marcus came into his office just to check his schedule. He sat down, said he was fine, but Elijah just looked at him, didn't speak, didn't blink, and slowly Marcus unraveled. Within 3 minutes, the boy was sobbing, hands over his face, saying, "I don't even know why I'm crying." But Elijah did. Because sometimes your presence carries what your words never need to say. That's the first mark, chosen one. The soul gaze. Your eyes make others uncomfortable, not because you judge them, but because your gaze is honest. Because you perceive. And perception is heavy for those still hiding. Your eyes carry storms that learned to be still. Your pupils reflect betrayals that never got an apology. And your lashes? They've caught tears that heaven counted, even when the world forgot. That's why they avoid your gaze. That's why they confess in your silence. That's why some look at you and shiver, not in fear of you, but in fear of what you see. You see too much, they'll say. You're too intense. I can't lie to you, but here's the secret. You didn't earn that gaze in glory. You earned it in grief. You're not intense, no deep. Because God allowed your eyes to break, so they could be rebuilt as mirrors, not of yourself, but of what's true. So if you've ever wondered why people look away, or why they open up when you've said nothing, if you've ever walked into a room and felt the temperature shift, if you've ever carried pain in your eyes that no one could name, yet everyone seemed to notice, then know this: you're not broken. You're not too much. You've been marked. Marked with the gaze that sees through the mask. And that's only the beginning. Part 2. The flicker that remembers. It had been 17 years since Elijah had stepped foot inside that house. The floorboards still groaned in all the same places. The walls still held the same shade of faded sage green. And the mirror, the one in his grandmother's room, still hung crooked above the dresser. He stood before it, and there it was again. That flicker, that strange moment when you look into your own eyes, and it feels like someone else is staring back. Not a stranger, not a demon, slowly, but a version of you that remembers more than this lifetime has lived. Elijah had felt it for years, the quiet remembering. He'd dream of cities he'd never visited, but could describe in detail. He knew words in languages he never studied. He could walk into places and feel like he'd returned rather than arrived. But it wasn't until that night, staring into his grandmother's old mirror, that the truth unfolded fully. You're not just carrying memories, you're carrying remembrance. That's the second mark in the eyes of the chosen. Recognition, not of faces, but of frequencies. You carry a flicker in your gaze that makes others pause, not because they know you, but because their soul does. Your eyes reveal something eternal. You've likely felt it. That strange sense that someone is watching you, but with love. That your dreams aren't just your mind, they're messages. That when you pray, the words feel ancient, like you're not just asking, you're activating. You don't just believe in God, you remember Him. You don't just walk with the Spirit. You've walked with Him before. Elijah remembered something his grandmother once whispered while stroking his hair. He was only 8. She had looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Your soul's older than mine, baby. You just forgot." Then she laughed, kissed his forehead and said, "But your eyes didn't forget, not fully." Backs to the flicker. That's the second mark in the eyes of the chosen ones. A glitch in the matrix. A light that doesn't come from biology, but from eternity. That's why people react to you so strangely. Some are drawn in, but don't know why. Some are repelled, but can't explain it. Some look at you and cry, because their soul sees the light they buried. In your eyes. Elijah once met a woman in a grocery store. They locked eyes for only a second. She froze. Tears welled up instantly. She whispered, "I feel like I know you from somewhere." He didn't answer. He simply nodded, because he did too. You see, when you're chosen, your eyes don't just observe, they awaken. You've probably noticed, strangers feel familiar. Songs hit you differently. Prophetic moments rise like déjà vu, but deeper, holier. Children stare at you like they know a secret. Dreams come true, not by magic, but by memory. The flicker in your eyes is not a trick of the light. It is spiritual data, encoded, assigned, alive. That flicker, it's the reminder you've been here before. You carry wisdom you never studied. You speak with gentleness, but it hits like thunder, because your soul remembers. That's why some people feel unsafe around you. Not because you're dangerous, but because your eyes reveal the truth they're hiding from. You carry the vibration of remembrance, the Spirit once told Elijah, and remembrance is dangerous to a world built on forgetting. If your eyes have ever made someone pause, if someone told you you seem wise beyond your years, if you've ever felt more at home in the Spirit than in your skin, then don't second-guess it anymore. That flicker in your eyes? It's not ego. It's not pride. It's prophetic memory. You didn't just come to earth to learn. You came to remember, to put back together what this world tried to erase. And your eyes? They are heaven's reminder that even in a world of forgetting, there are still those who remember. And if you've carried that flicker in silence, you're not alone. Light carries it too, and so do millions of others, walking the earth, unseen, but never unmarked. Part 3. The stillness that commands storms. He didn't know her. She hadn't looked at him once, but she could feel him. The silence surrounding Elijah wasn't just absence of sound. It was presence. Anchored, unshakable. That's the third mark. Not in how you speak, but in what happens when you don't. Chosen ones carry a stillness in their eyes that the world can't explain. In a society addicted to speed, noise, and distraction, you carry the calm that unsettles chaos. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of center. People feel it when they walk into the room. They may not say it aloud, but something shifts. The voice is lower, distractions fade, even tension starts to dissolve, and no one quite knows why, but heaven does, because chosen ones have walked through storms the world never saw. They've battled depression while still leading worship. They've survived betrayal with a smile on their face and a scream in their chest. They've stood in cemeteries, clutching broken promises with shaking hands, and whispered to God, "Even now, I still trust you." That kind of stillness doesn't come from therapy, doesn't come from training. It comes from knowing that no matter what rages around you, your soul is anchored in something deeper. Elijah sat quietly as the woman's sobs softened. He never said a word, but she slowly looked up, met his eyes, and just breathed. One breath, only, and whispered, "Thank you." That's when he knew. That's when she knew. The stillness had done its work. That's the third mark, chosen one. Your eyes carry a frequency, a vibration of calm, not because you haven't felt panic, but because you've made peace with it. Your peace doesn't come from predictability or presence. You've probably noticed it. Animals are drawn to you. Children fall asleep near you. People pour their pain into your silence like it's a sacred container. You don't offer quick fixes. You don't interrupt. You simply hold space. And somehow people heal in your quiet. Because your eyes don't scream. They settle. They carry divine stillness. The same stillness that hovered over the waters before the earth was formed. The same stillness Jesus held when he slept through the storm. The same stillness that, when awakened, commanded the waves to be still, and they obeyed. Peace, be still. You don't just read that verse. You carry it in your gaze. And that's why some people misunderstand you. They mistake your stillness for passivity, your silence for weakness, your calm for apathy. But they don't know what it cost you to hold that calm. They didn't see the nights you cried yourself into numbness. They didn't feel the tremble in your chest as you walked into battle. Again, they didn't hear the whispers you answered when no one else believed God was speaking. You didn't just survive the storm. You became stillness within it. You don't need to shout to shift the atmosphere. You are the shift. So if you've ever sat in a room and felt everything change when you said nothing, if your silence speaks louder than noise, if people gravitate toward you for peace they can't describe, then that is not coincidence. That is mark number 3. You are a carrier of sacred stillness. The stillness that commands storms. The stillness that soothes trauma. The stillness that silences the accuser. But the stillness that remains when everything else falls apart. Elijah stood to leave the hospital. He never got her name. She never asked his. But peace had passed through the room like a wind that couldn't be stopped. Not because of a sermon, not because of a miracle, but because a chosen one had sat silently, and stillness had done its holy work. So if you carry that kind of calm, if you've fought for your peace, and you protect it like it's holy, because it is, then don't doubt your calling. Your stillness is not empty. It is full of God. And when you walk into a room, heaven walks in with you. Not loudly, not forcefully, just present.
What your eyes have always known. There's a reason you've always looked away from mirrors too soon. A reason you flinched when someone said, "Your eyes feel ancient." Or, "I feel like you know something I don't." You too. And it's not arrogance. It's not imagination. It's remembrance. God hid a holy mark in your eyes. And for years you mistook it for being too sensitive, too serious, too intense. but heaven called it something else. Marked, anointed, chosen. You carry the first mark, depth. Eyes that see through masks because they were trained by pain. You carry the second mark, recognition, a flicker of eternity that makes others feel seen by the Spirit. You carry the third mark, stillness, a quiet so deep, even chaos submits in its presence. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone should, because your gaze wasn't made to entertain. It was made to awaken. It wasn't crafted to charm crowds. It was forged to unsettle the atmosphere of lies, to silence what's false, to stir what's asleep, to remind even the broken. God still sees you. Elijah knows now. All those years he spent in silence, all the looks that made people uncomfortable, all the dreams he thought were just imagination, were proof of something deeper. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't cursed. He was called, and so are you. You didn't come here to fit in. You came here to remember. And through your eyes, others will start to remember too. You've been marked since the beginning, not by the world's labels, not by your trauma, but by heaven's assignment. Your gaze carries an imprint, not of what you've seen, but of what you've survived. Don't dim it to protect others from their own shadows. Don't apologize for seeing what others deny. You are not just observant. You are anointed to perceive. And in a world drunk on distraction, your eyes are sobriety. When you look in the mirror now, do you finally see what your soul has been trying to tell you all along? If this story touched your spirit, if you felt the marks rising within you as you listened, then don't stay silent anymore. Let others find their reflection through your voice. Comment below, "I see now." Let it be your declaration that you've accepted what heaven placed inside you. And if you're ready for more stories like this, stories that awaken, that confirm, that call forth the deeper things of God, subscribe. Because the next one, it doesn't just go deeper. It goes where only the marked can follow. You don't need more proof. You already carry it. In your depth, in your flicker, in your stillness. You are one of God's chosen ones. And the world will never look the same again. Because now, you finally see.